Good afternoon and welcome to Volpe Koenig's webinar, Cut Cost, Not Quality, How In-House Counsel Can Manage Patent Portfolio Costs During Uncertain Times. My name is Anna Melanger. I am the Director of Marketing for the firm. I have with us today two of our shareholders and patent attorneys, Wes McMichael and Rob Leonard. Wes and Rob, we look forward to everything that you have to say, so I'll turn it over to you, Wes.
Hi, my name is Wes McMichael. I've been with Volpe Koenig since 2004. I'm a patent attorney. I practice primarily in the high-tech industries, telecom, computer science, but I venture into some mechanical and other areas as well. Rob, want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Wes. My name is Rob Leonard. I've been with Volpe for about 15 years. Handle all aspects of IP prosecution, some IPR work, some licensing work, mostly high tech, a lot of cell phone technology. And today we're going to talk about cutting costs and hopefully not your quality, some ideas that we've picked up over the course of our practice that we'd like to share with you.
And I would just add too that, this is a new world we're living in. We're trying to try something new here. And in 15 years of practice, I've not given a webinar, particularly from my house yet. So, I hope that it will go smoothly, but I look forward to all your patience. And also along those lines, we have a great group. We're really honored by some of the people that have chosen to attend today and excited about it. So we'd love to have input and questions and interactive. If you think you've got other ideas along the way that you want to share, I would encourage you to use the questions function, and Anna can jump in and prompt us with your questions. So without further ado, we'll get going here. So we thought it would make sense just to look initially at what happens with patent filings. Why are we even having this conversation? When we're anticipating that, we're seeing an economic slowdown. We're anticipating that it's going to last for a little while, and so we thought it'd be good to go back and look at what happened with patent filings during the last major economic event, which was 2008. And this graph here is from the Small Business Association, so it breaks out large firms and small firms, and that's companies with 500 or more employees are considered large, and less than 500 are considered small. And hey, so you can see here the two. Yep.
Sorry to interrupt, but we're still looking at the intro slide. So the slide did not advance.
Okay. That is not good.
I promise we had this up and running not 10 minutes ago. So there we are.
There we go. Okay.
We can see it now.
Hopefully everybody could hear us before. I think maybe it's just the screen share was paused. So we're letting. So, okay. To kind of refresh, what we're looking at here is a graph of patent filings during the last economic the recession of 2008, and recessions when GDP retracts. And so there's two vertical lines on this graph that on the right side that show the start and then the end of that recession based on GDP. So you can see the large companies were a little slower to react and continued with their filings for about a year before they started to cut them back, whereas the smaller companies tended to start reducing things right away. And then on the far right of the graph, you can see the small companies came back quicker, where the larger companies were a little slower to react. So no real big surprises here. People cut back. But the big thing that we want to emphasize, and the reason we're having this conversation, is that you shouldn't. This is one of the more important times to protect your innovations. Big disruptive technologies tend to arise out of economic slowdowns. I gave some examples of that on the right, of WhatsApp, Venmo, Groupon, Instagram, Uber were all innovative companies that were formed during the last recession. if you go back, I looked a little more at 2001, some specific products. The iPod was launched in 2001, and Crest white strips were also launched. Both have been highly successful, obviously. There's some other examples, but anyway, there's no real message here other than, we expect you're going to be in a, you're not going to be able to avoid a short-term budget crunch. Hopefully it's just a short-term one, but it's important that with a short-term budget crunch, you don't derail your long-term competitive advantage by failing to protect your innovations. So we want to try to give you some creative ideas so that when, the CEO comes down the hall or the board puts pressure on you to cut back on your legal spend, you'll have some ideas that you can pull to right away. And then also some long-term factors we'll talk about that where things you can be doing that will you start to see a more efficient patent prosecution process for you and reduce your spend longer term. Okay, so and this is long term, and again, we're going to get to specific specific tricks and fees you can cut out and things, but we want to look at this kind of a holistic approach and what are some strategies you can do to support your business goals. And kind of an underlying theme to all of this is to have clear assessments and prioritization of your patents and your assets so that you can apply a tiered approach, and you can direct capital to your biggest priority assets, your most important patents that are going to be deal drivers down the road or backing up your most important products. So the idea is if you don't have one, create a process for assessing and prioritizing applications, log everything, keep track of this. There's, so that if there's a regime change within your company or new counsel comes in, you've got clear records of why things were, why something was important. And we'll get into down the road why it's important to have that history. But if you look at this, with a provisional filing, it might be a $1,000 decision, a $500 decision, depending on how you do it. But that's not really what you're making the decision on. You've got key points in prosecution where you're going to have to decide how much money you want to spend on this asset, and it gets more and more important. So when we talk about 12-month filings, we'll talk about specific things you can do to save money on 12-month filings. And then 30-month filings, often overlooked that's coming down the road, but it's significantly more expensive depending upon your filing strategies. The costs really start to escalate and compound. So as a way for assessing and prioritizing applications, we view kind of three stakeholders that are involved. You've got the legal department, you've got the business unit or the licensing team, and then you've got R&D and engineering. And what we feel is the most important thing to do is to obtain information from all three areas, and companies do this differently. Some bring them all to the table at once. Some collect, surveys or information from R&D, and then legal discusses with business units, or sometimes the business unit is deciding which patents they want to file. But I think the most important thing is that you get input from all three. And really, if you can bring them all to the table at the same time, whether it's a weekly, webinar or a weekly meeting, monthly meeting, quarterly meeting, whatever it is, and based on your, what practically works for your company, getting the three stakeholders together can be critical for and then logging all of their viewpoints can be critical for kind of making quick decisions down the road. Once this is what business thought of it, this is what R&D thought of it, this is what the legal assessment was, that will let you make quick decisions or tier applications so that you can say, let's prioritize these ones down the road. Hey, if we have to make cuts, these are the group we would probably cut. These are the ones we wouldn't file. So this is pretty basic, but it's important to think about that these are the three people that should provide input so that you don't have to go chase people down the road. Okay, so stepping into kind of more specifics. Okay, so how are you going to reduce the cost of your patent preparation, right? The actual drafting of the applications and creating it. And then also, how are you going to maintain consistency and quality when you do that? So the biggest thing, and we'll come back, you'll see this throughout there, is training the inventors, teaching them to really identify inventive features early on so that they know what they should be filing patents on. And then, making sure that they can fill out an intelligent and effective IDF. And if you don't have one, then you certainly want to make sure you kind of have a standard invention disclosure form that you use within your company that asks all the right questions. Things like, can you provide a figure that will explain your invention? What was the problem that you were working on? What are alternative solutions? All these questions that we would ask during a 12-month, or if we're preparing an application, we would ask those questions during an inventor interview. And getting them on the paper first, getting the inventors to think about it before you engage outside counsel will save time, will make better quality applications down the road. If you can, the two questions I always get asked when people, or I ask when people ask me how much a patent application costs, I ask the question of how complex is your technology, and what are you going to give me? So that's, if you're going to give me a sketch on a napkin, it's going to be a lot more expensive than if you're going to give me a well-developed, robust invention disclosure form. So if you don't have one, if you don't train your inventors, start doing it. If you don't have time to train your inventors, make your outside counsel do it. We do this all the time. We don't charge for it. We see it as an opportunity to strengthen our relationship with clients. So when we get asked, if you're like, hey, could you give us a new IDF? Could you teach our inventors how to fill us out? Like, we're happy to do that kind of stuff, and your counsel should be too. So the next thing that we think is critical is having a real solid developed application template and guidelines for your applications. This will help maintain consistency and quality. Many of you are probably distributing applications out to multiple firms, and even within firms, personnel changes. If you have those templates, you'll get consistent applications. Things like, specific wording you might like if you're, an autonomous vehicle maker. Do you want the claims to be directed towards the vehicle? Do you want them to be directed towards, a processing unit? Do you want the word, autonomous in the claim? Things like that. You want to think through and get them into a guideline with a clear set of rules. Also in that guideline, things like claim length or numbers of claims you should think about, right? Excess claims are one of the biggest areas where we see companies wasting money. We'll get a portfolio transferred into us, and there'll be 8 independent claims in the U.S. case, and you go back and be like, why did you file these? And I don't know, or I've seen situations where it's, well, the inventors wanted to protect all of these things. Well, at the end of the day, you're probably going to get a restriction requirement. You're not going to get these 8 claims. You could have put them in down the road when you saw how important it was. Don't do it at filing. Really hold your counsel to 3 independent claims in the U.S. and then in Europe, the cost of excess claims over 15 goes up, very quickly, with 245 euros for additional claims, and then it goes up again at 35. I think it's like 600 euros. So there's very few cases where you want to be paying those fees. So think hard. It's worth a half hour of attorney time to come up with a way to not file that 16th claim, right? So you definitely want to put those strict rules in for your counsel and make the exception be higher numbers of claims. And then also something to think about on the flip side, there's no claim fees in the PCT. So if you do have a narrow set of dependent claims or something that you want to get an examination on, you can put them in the PCT. You could put 25 claims in the PCT. It won't cost more other than page fees. So, and of course, attorney time. Claims aren't free. So you do want to be mindful if you tell your counsel, to prepare, a more detailed set of claims for the PCT, that there will be added cost there. And then the last point is outsourcing or sole sourcing. And by that, I mean kind of like you should use as a large patent owner, or large patent portfolio owner, you should be taking your counsel's vendors, their draftsmen, their translators, and think about, can you collectively get a better deal for your drawings? Right now, outside counsel probably goes to their draftsmen, who they have lunch with weekly, and they get, courted by, and they say, okay, I got a new application to draft. Here's the drawings I need, and it costs $80, $100 a page. Well, if you collectively will go out to some of the drafting firms, and there's U.S. firms, there's firms in India, they're all over the world, but they specialize in it, and they're bigger firms. They're not sole draftsmen, and they will compete on price, and you can get your drawings down under $25 a sheet, and they'll be consistent across multiple firms. If you tell your firm these are who we're using, they're gonna, this is the price, this is the process. You contact this guy, you'll find that you can save a lot of money on drawings there, and you'll get a better, more consistent result. Now, there's exceptions again where you've got complex mechanical drawings, things like that. You want to use a high-end draftsman, that makes sense. Even with a high-end draftsman, though, it still is. It makes sense for the client to come forward and negotiate on price, because the firms aren't really that vested in it, unless you structure the deal correctly. And similar with translations, if you're doing a lot of international prosecution, and you're probably paying a lot of money for law firms to get translations, and you could be going straight to the translation firms. And then this last point, I think, is an interesting one. This is a new one that we've seen a lot of demos on, and it's definitely intriguing. So they have software providers that can actually write an application using their AI software. So the way it works is it works well for certain technology. It works well for software inventions and computer-related inventions, where you can write a set of method claims, and their software will generate the start of an application. That's about, depends on the claims, but maybe 15 to 20 pages of text. And then associated, it'll also generate flow diagrams and boxes, block diagrams. Sorry, I've been talking for a while. So I'm not sure whether the AI thing will really catch on or not. It's definitely intriguing and something to think about if you have the right technology. So I think we're to our first poll question, right?
Yeah, we'll give this a try. So, first poll question here is: would you consider letting your outside counsel use an AI drafted application? And I think you can select one of three options, I believe. No, maybe as a starting point if it saved me money, and third option, we are already doing it. So I'll give everyone a few seconds here to log their results. And right about now, it's interesting. We're about 50-50 between no and maybe as a starting point. Does not appear that anyone currently is doing it already, which is not surprising. It's not surprising.
Yeah, and the companies, I mean, it's impressive. If you haven't seen a demo, I would check it out. They say they're going to be able to do more, mechanical and other things soon. I'm not sure how that works, but that's, different. But it'll be interesting if it comes to fruition. Okay. So another aspect that I think we'll look at, kind of now shifting a little bit from the next stage of prosecution. We're going to look specifically at the international filings and fees you may be paying and kind of strategic decisions. So at the PCT phase, one that we see a lot of is, Europe's important to us, so we file PCT applications. Well, if Europe's the only country besides the U.S., or Europe's the only jurisdiction besides the U.S. that you're filing in, you should consider filing direct. I took a sample application and pulled the fees. So on the left side is the cost to file direct, and this is obviously doesn't include attorney prep time. And on the EP number, the 2292, that was from one of our associates. I just asked him, I sent him a sample application. It was eight figures, 20 page application, nothing unique or complicated about it. So, and then on the right side would be the cost to file it through the PCT, and that's using the U.S. as the ISA. So obviously there's some options to save money there. But it's, as you can see, it's more expensive. So even if you were going to add a third country, you may still find that over the long run, it's less expensive to file direct than it is to go through the PCT. If you're doing 3 or more, it's probably going to end up being better in the PCT. But it's worth running the numbers, with your specific filing strategies. And then the other decision down in the lower part here is which ISA are you using? There's a big cost difference, and if you don't fill these forms out, or you don't do these filings, you may not be kind of aware of the difference. But any applicant can use one of these search authorities, and you can see that for a while Europe was the most expensive. I actually, in preparing this, I pulled the numbers. I think because the exchange rates are coming together a little closer between the euro and the dollar, and the U.S. just raised their price. So now the U.S. is the most expensive search authority. I think traditionally people think Europe tends to give the most thorough searches. It may depend on technology, but the U.S. has caught up a lot. There used to be a big lag in the U.S., and I think their timing they've improved on significantly. And then Korea, for half the price of the U.S., gives a pretty good search for high tech. I couldn't tell you how they do with pharma or life sciences stuff, but for high tech, Korea is pretty savvy with their searches as well, and they're quick. They're probably a little quicker than the U.S. or Europe. So if you want a real quick search, you can get that information. You can go through Korea, and it actually will save you money. And then one other thing to remember with the U.S., there is a small entity search fee at the PCT level. So if you're a small entity, the U.S. is probably your best value, because you'll get the same search as you would for $2,000. You get it for $1,040. And then Russia is an interesting one. I don't have a lot of experience with it, but they're really expensive. And I do have plenty of cases where the client didn't really care about the PCT search. They wanted to do it they wanted to get the case on file. They wanted to have the option to file internationally down the road. They didn't want to spend money up front, so Russia gives you that option there with kind of the least expensive search. I think generally, you probably get what you pay for as far as the quality of the search, but you have to give a bigger sample set, I think, to see. I tend to see that more with startups and one-off filers who don't want to throw down the big money for it, or maybe somebody's already had a search done. There's lots of reasons why you might not care which ISA you use. Okay. So and then some more international filing tactics to think about. I think, and again, we're talking about kind of maximizing your coverage without, minimizing your expenses and kind of finding those balance points. So I think most big patent owners are using annuity consolidators. They're using a CPA or MaxVal, something like that, to pay their annuities. There are also filing aggregators. One we work with a lot is called Questel, part of Profile, and they will package up your, so if your outside counsel prepares the PCT application, when you get to the national phase, a filing aggregator can take that and distribute it out and file it in individual countries wherever you tell them around the world, and they'll be, they could be a third of the cost. They could be more than a third of the cost it will be a significant savings over having your U.S. firm send out emails through network FAs with specific filing instructions. you're more likely to have consistent results as far as how inventor names, everything will get done exactly the same through one of these aggregators, and they can still file and then hand the case off to your favorite foreign counsel. But it's a mechanical process. It's not really something that you need your U.S. law firm to be doing. And if you're filing a lot in the PCT and entering a lot of countries, it's a great way to just save money. Very quickly you can switch over to them, and that's a good tactic. The patent prosecution highway has been around for a while, and hopefully we're all familiar with it. If you get a favorable search report at the PCT level, you can get expedited prosecution in a lot of countries. The reason it was created was to reduce duplicate work by patent offices. So if you can reduce duplicate work by patent offices, you can also reduce duplicate work by law firms. What you find is, one, the application enters prosecution. For example, if you have a favorable written opinion and you use that to enter the PPH in the U.S., that right away you're starting off on the good foot with the examiner, and more likely that they're going to want to give you an allowance quickly. They also it's because it's on an expedited clock, they're going to want to get it off their docket more quickly, and they don't want it to come back. They don't like having the cases on their expedited docket because they have to handle them quickly. So I've heard that the examiners are more likely to allow it when they know if it comes back, it's also going to be on this expedited clock for them. So something to think about. And then kind of developing another place we see companies wasting a lot of money is they'll file all their patents in 20 countries, or something like that. And we'll ask them, well, why did you do that? And they'll say, well, because we've got offices in these countries, or we've got sensors deployed around the world, or anything like, oh, this is where we sell stuff, or we've got factories here. And so I think that's good, but you want to look at your primary countries are big markets where there's lots, if there's infringement in small countries, it's less important than if there's infringement in big countries. So develop your primary countries based on your market and tool, and then have your secondary countries and spread your filings out. So, every filing gets filed in your primary countries, and then, you pick 2 secondary countries for each filing and rotate through those. And over time, what you'll develop is, you'll develop patent coverage in every one of the countries that's important to you, but you'll have great coverage in the countries where you might actually want to assert the patents, or or where you're worried about your biggest infringement. And if you're struggling with choosing countries where you're protecting your stuff, if you haven't tried the Global IP Center has a great tool. It's free. I included the link. I think Anna's going to send the link out. But if you haven't checked this out, it presents like a map of the world, and then you can click into the individual countries, and they rate everything based on enforceability of patents, cost to obtain, and develops a score for each country that sort of represents the kind of general level of respect and value that IP has in the country. So it's very interesting if you're looking at considering new jurisdictions or anything like that. It's real helpful. And again, my last slide we ended with, are we filing AI patents? This one is a little more out of the box too. If you're a company that likes to keep things pending and you're filing serial divisionals, particularly Europe is a place where a lot of people like to keep the patent pending so that they can adjust their claims or capture design around things like that. The cost of filing EP divisional is expensive because you have to pay the back annuities when you file it. So in addition to the filing fees, if it's a divisional you're filing in year 8 of the patent, you're paying the filing fees plus the first 8 years of annuities in Europe, which is, it very quickly adds up to $10,000, $15,000. So keep that in mind. And the idea here is just don't let the first one grant, or maybe let one grant and then keep the next one pending. And the way you do that is when you get your 71-3, which is the approval of text and notice intention to grant communication, you can reject the text and you can put in a small amendment. And as long as you don't waive your right to another 71-3, they have to send you another 71-3. And that will give you the same opportunity again. So you can kind of keep that cycle going and keep the EP case pending. So kind of the idea here is like a pending EP case, because of the cost of what it costs to maintain a granted one, the pending EP case may be more valuable than a granted EP case, particularly if you have issued patent somewhere else so that you can show you have a patentable invention. Anyway, that's just kind of that's, I'd say, more forward thinking, more creative. So now I'm going to throw it back to Rob. Going to talk about forecasting and tracking costs.
All right, thanks, Wes. Yeah, so once you filed your applications, I mean, I think we've kind of talked, Wes has talked up until now about, getting applications on file, US, PCT. So now you have a portfolio, you're prosecuting it, you're still filing new cases, you have office actions, issue fees, things like that. So, one thing that we do for a lot of our clients is sort of a docket-based cost estimation. We use Excel, there's other tools out there, but Excel's easy, everyone has access to it. And basically the idea here is to do a cost projection looking out maybe 1, 2, 3 months, based on an average cost per item. So maybe that's a non-provisional filing, provisional filing, US office action, foreign office action. So whatever that costs, and just an aside, it's sort of interesting to ask your counsel for those numbers, if that's something you're not working on a fixed fee for, that can be an interesting conversation in and of itself. But to take those average costs per item and then have your counsel using their docket system sort of generate this table that would, multiply average cost per item by the actual docket activity. So that'll give you an idea of what's coming up down the pike. And then, you can also reconcile that and look at for the past couple months, well, what actually got billed versus activity that actually happened. So that's interesting. On the next slide, we'll show an example of that in just 1 second. So similarly, and kind of works together with this docket-based cost estimation, is to have activity-based billing codes. A lot of clients use this already. A lot of clients use leads codes. That's been around for a long time. I feel like in a lot of instances that's overly cumbersome, and you can just use customized codes. Put this in your outside counsel guidelines and have your counsel work towards that. And what this allows you to do is sort of classify your spend into buckets, and it allows you to see where your spend's going and maybe have some levers to pull to either slow down spend in a certain bucket or increase spend based on your strategic needs. So Wes, if you could just jump to the next slide, we can show that example. So this is very rudimentary, but you'd be surprised by how many people don't do this, who are spending $20,000, $30,000 a month on prosecution, maybe more. But so along the left-hand side, we have different types of activities: provisionals, PCT, OAs, which would be response to written opinion. A lot of people don't do that. U.S. office actions, foreign office actions, and then some customized activity codes, right? So we're putting these spends into buckets. You can you can do all sorts of pivot tables with with your billing spreadsheets and see where your spend's going, who's putting time into those buckets, things like that. And then in this pink area, activity counts, that information would be pulled from your counsel's docket system. And then average cost per activity in blue. And that gets multiplied out, so you can look, April, May, June, you can kind of see upcoming expenses, and you can also see trends. And maybe just because of the natural ebb and flow of prosecution, for example, foreign OAs, in April, are high. There's, for whatever reason, this portfolio has 23, but in May, maybe there's only 7, just natural timing of the portfolio. So you can start to see maybe, maybe May would be a good month to do some other things because you have a lower spend for foreign office actions. So Wes, if you jump back, yeah, thank you.
Sure.
Okay, so just continuing on as far as forecasting and tracking, another thing that we like to do is an accrual based on work in process. So we typically bill when tasks are completed. We file an application, we bill for the application. File an office action response, we bill for that. Up until that happens, we hold that time. So, if we bill you every month, there's quite a bit of held time. That's work in process. Now, you might not know that that's coming. You know that you have an application that's going to be filed next month, but you might not know that that's over budget. So this accrual based on WIP kind of provides an early warning of large bills. And it's also a good mechanism, to communicate with outside counsel. If things are, coming up outside of budget, you can kind of get a early warning on that. And then finally, forecasting and tracking, the ultimate forecasting tool would be some sort of fixed fee or life cycle billing model, where you have cost certainty. In a fixed fee model, that cost certainty comes with each point in the prosecution timeline, whether that's filing an application or an office action. Over the life cycle, that's the life of the patent. So maybe filing, issuance, etc. So they're all good methods. I think we could probably have a whole webinar just on this bullet point. So there's a lot to talk about, but I think the key here is to have a collaborative approach with your counsel and identify your pain points, and then allow your counsel to create a team and a process and a procedure kind of work for everyone. And I mean, fixed fee and intelligent alternative fee arrangements are definitely prevalent. We work a lot with them, and they can be successful for both parties. So there's no need to shy away from them, for sure. Okay. So again, as you're prosecuting your portfolio, one thing that will reduce costs, but certainly increase quality, but also reduce costs, is effective methods to communicate with your outside counsel. So, reporting procedures. A lot of law firms, I think, use this as a revenue generator, reporting office actions using templates. It's very low overhead, but it's really inefficient. It's a lot of sort of useless information for the client. So reporting procedures that are efficient and effective for your needs. And one thing you can leverage here is your counsel's resources. A lot of law firms are pretty high tech. They have file transfer sites, they have docket software and file management software that have client portals. So there's a lot of ways to exchange information, and you can really leverage your counsel's current platforms and systems to make things efficient and effective. So the idea here also eliminate low value repetitive information, right? So do you need anything more than the office action? Do you need a reporting letter with some useless information in it? Probably not. So just tell your outside counsel you don't want that. You're not going to pay for it. Another easy one is double reporting on foreign cases, where you have a foreign associate report to your U.S. counsel who's directing your global prosecution, then your U.S. counsel reports to you. That's a double reporting, and just when we see that, we definitely want to eliminate that. And this isn't going to save you tons of money, but starts to get everyone thinking about effective, efficient prosecution, and and other ways to save money. So maybe in place of reporting, you do a monthly docket report. So that's another idea. You could use an Excel sheet that could generate a phone call, but like you have all your office actions, maybe they get sent in bulk to you, and then you have a call with outside counsel recommendations of how to prosecute the case. And this can be efficient, it can be effective, and it can be, definitely save you some money on the reporting side. And it'll improve quality because it'll open up the lines of communication. You can also utilize default instructions there where it's appropriate, and that can also save time and save money for your outside counsel. Another point here I'd like to talk about is a clear identification of lead counsel. When your U.S. counsel is directing your foreign associates, certainly probably in Europe or China, other jurisdictions as well, if it's clear to everyone who is really taking the lead with strategy and prior art review and claim drafting, it can eliminate double work, such that your foreign counsel is not creating a strategy and then your U.S. counsel's doing the same thing. Then you're basically double paying for an office action response. So kind of lining that up, making it real clear who's directing what, and also maintaining sort of the same budgetary guidelines for your foreign counsel that you do for your U.S. counsel. Typically your U.S. counsel is directing foreign prosecution. You're really in tune with them, and you keep them on a tight leash, so to speak. There's no reason that you can't also apply those same budgetary guidelines to the foreign counsel that they're using. That can also save a lot of money. We see that in a lot of instances where the foreign associates are sort of a black hole, and they're often doing whatever they're doing, and the fees are definitely less closely scrutinized than on the U.S. side. That's a big area to save money. Kind of with the monthly docket reports and reporting procedures, so periodic counsel meetings, so that if you're doing a monthly docket report instead of individual, maybe you have substantive meetings for case-related, docket-related stuff. But then I think it's also important to have scheduled periodic touches with your counsel for administrative type issues. And certainly now in sort of this new era we find ourselves in, looking to keep an eye on costs, I think it's important to understand who's working on your work, understand what their rates are, understand what your billing arrangements are. Have this type of administrative meeting now. I think might be a good time to have that touch. And then additionally, as far as communication goes, prosecution circuit breakers. So consider defining in your guidelines some check-in points where you might want to say, hey, look, maybe we should stop, maybe we should shift gears, right? So maybe that's a second final office action, maybe it's a total dollar spend, maybe the inventors have left the company, so like that invention and application has sort of lost support. Maybe the claims no longer cover the product due to prior art. Whatever the case may be, whatever your technology is, whatever you're trying to achieve, to define these circuit breakers where you can say, hey, is this a sunk cost? And we'll talk a little bit more about that on a future slide. But I think this is a good thing to think about as far as communicating with your counsel and looking for ways to stop spend.
Right.
Yeah. So just briefly, this is a graphic that's taken from the Patent Office website, and the link here is on the slide. I think Matt will send it around. But I just wanted to highlight a few things. So Wes had talked about the patent prosecution highway prior to examination. So you can see that along with some of the other initiatives the Patent Office has for improving patent quality and promoting compact prosecution. So, hopefully speeding things up. Two other things I'd just like to quickly talk about. If your counsel's not already made you aware of this, you're not already aware of it. Two things you should be thinking about are the after final consideration pilot. And just briefly, what this allows you to do is file a petition. It's free. After final, it gives the examiner a little bit more time to look at the case if you make a narrowing amendment. And then additionally, the IDS procedures in the US are a little bit burdensome, and the quick path IDS procedure allows you to file references that come in after the case has been allowed. This can prevent RCEs, which, you know, second large entity RCE fee is $2,000 almost now. So, you know, so both of these initiatives are definitely things you should be thinking about if you're not already.
Okay. You know, obviously there's been a lot of discussion. Everybody all of a sudden on social media is an expert in exponential growth, and you know, I think we can think of the same concepts with our patent portfolios. The point of this slide is basically to say that part of maintaining and growing a successful patent portfolio includes pruning it. It's similar to, you know, your bushes out front. You really want them to grow well, but you've got to prune them too to keep them, you know, looking nice. And same thing with your patent portfolio. If you don't cut the junk at some point and recognize it's on cost, then it's going to get out of hand. And at some point, somebody's going to look at their budget and say, "Oh my gosh, we're paying, you know, $10 billion in patent annuities." It you know, depends what the number is, but it'll be a significant number. And I'm always astounded when I actually hear. What I think, you know, we've talked a lot about tiered prosecution and keeping track of your quality. And I think that the idea is to use IP management software or a spreadsheet or some kind of database to continue to track and keep a handle on where cases fit into your business and where their value resides. Is it defensive? Is it speculative? Is it you know, something that you think you can sell? And so a great way to look at that is as your annuities come up, and pretty much if you do it quarterly, you'll catch all your worldwide annuities. You could do it once a year. You could do it, you know, you could do it weekly. Just work in a smaller window, but find a way to keep track of your annuities that are upcoming and line it up with information collected in the past and make those difficult decisions on when to give up on something. It doesn't have to be a pending case you give up on, but you know, obviously you can make the same decision points at those prosecution circuit breakers that Rob talked about. You want to be pruning regularly, and so you can go back to the same three stakeholders that we talked about at the beginning. You got business and licensing, you've got legal, and you've got your R&D and engineering, and get the input that you need from those. I've seen some clients that have a quote unquote death committee that are, you know, like the last three people that get to look at it to decide, is there no other value here that we can look at? And if they all say no, then those are sunk costs. And if you don't understand sunk costs, it's a pretty basic, you know, economic principle, but money you spend yesterday doesn't justify money you're going to spend today. What's going to happen tomorrow is what justifies money you're going to spend today. So Dilbert explains it well at the bottom of the slide here.
Yeah, and Wes,
and
I think
opportunities.
I was just going to say we could take the opportunity here to launch a poll question, which is, you know, how often does your organization prune its portfolio? So I'll throw that out there to the group: regularly, only in a budget crisis, which I think, you know, we could argue now is that time, or never. So the responses are rolling in. And interestingly, it seems like the majority of the participants here, you know, do in fact prune their portfolio regularly. So that is a
good. That's good. That's a healthy patent portfolio then. And then obviously there's alternatives to giving up. You know, before depending on your portfolio and your business strategy, there's opportunities to sell patents all the time. There's opportunities to push things off, even if you're not making a product anymore. There may be licensability for your patents. There might be some other way to monetize them, or use them as value in a settlement and swap patents with somebody else. Maybe you've got a hole in your portfolio and you've got too many that are directed to one aspect of your product. So you can look for opportunities there, and it's something we do a fair amount of this for clients, and it's fun work, and there are firms who will do this on contingency. There are lots of different ways to get it done, but before you give up, you may ask that question of, is there some other value here other than our original business purpose for filing this? So something to think about. Okay. Rob?
Yeah, so there is some, so in addition to cutting costs, there may be some advantage to just shifting costs, right? That's certainly something we do in patent prosecution all the time. So more upfront costs maybe can reduce long-term spend. Maybe you have cash today, and because of the crisis, you're thinking there might be a cash crunch in a month or two. In any event, there are some reasons and some ways to cost shift to sooner, spending those costs sooner. So, like, for example, put more time into developing claim sets, do more prior art searches, try to get more certainty earlier in the process, interview cases early. So, spending dollars for counsel to do that, develop and review mappings to potential targets, potential infringers, or even your own products earlier in the prosecution as opposed to later. So there's just a few ideas to cost shift sooner.
And then there's strategies for deferring costs, which we're all familiar with. Sometimes we don't think about, but again, if you're a company that files, you file straight non-provisional applications, you don't file provisionals, but you're looking at this year saying they're going to cut our budget 20%. Maybe that's a place to start saying, hey, let's file these as provisionals, and we'll just save money on filing fees. We can even take the same process, or you could just put the stake in the ground and then deal with it next year when there's more money to be had. Shorter term solutions, you can file applications without paying the fees. Sometimes it's good to remind people, like, if you file, you can tell your counsel, file a continuation, don't pay the fees, don't file, just use the old claims. They have everything ready to go. They could do that for, $250, and the application, the next thing will happen, you'll get a notice of missing parts in kind of 15 to 30 days, and then you'll have 60 days to respond to that. But you can even extend that out 4 more months. So you could potentially push a filing fee for a continuation out, 6 to 8 months if you're aggressive about it. Now, you're granted you'll pay extension fees, and there's actually more cost there, but there are ways to shift costs too. So if you're in a serious budget crunch for the next 2 months, there's definitely things you can think about. And one other idea too is if you want to just put off prosecution and for a difficult case, you can put it into appeal, and obviously again there's a little cost in filing that appeal, but you probably won't have to deal with the case for 2 or 3 years. So again, these are real strategic decisions that every case is going to be different, but there's opportunities when you start thinking creatively to roll costs down the road in lots of different ways. I think. Anything else on this from Rob?
No, I think that's good, Wes.
Wes and Rob,
Okay,
thank you so much for that wonderful webinar. We have just a couple minutes left. We want to be respectful of your time. We are coming up on the hour, but I do want to ask, if anyone has questions, go ahead and put it into the questions, and Rob and Wes will be more than happy to answer that. I'll just give you a minute to do that.
Yeah, maybe if as any of the attendees think about questions, we can just briefly touch on the summary of things you can do right now Just a quick high-level summary. Stop paying excess claim fees. Consider filing direct if your filing strategy, jives with that. Consider your international search authority. If you're filing a lot of PCT cases, I mean that can add up. Streamline vendors, ask for discounts. Certainly, you won't get them if you don't ask. Change your font. I'm not sure if Wes, did you touch on this, but this font here.
I might have glossed it. I think I was going too fast then. So
yeah, so this is actually Arial narrow. So depending on how long your applications are, and PCT applications, you pay by the page. This can actually save quite a bit of money if you're filing 150 cases a year. Yeah, and then there's things you can do over time. As Wes talked about, inventor training is a huge one that can save you a tremendous amount of money. Tiering your portfolio and kind of handling certain tiers different than others can also save you money and really focus your dollar spend where you want it on your high value assets. So as I spoke about, forecasting and task specific spend tracking can give you greater insight to where your dollars are going and allow you to pull levers to move that money around as it makes sense. Communication's obviously key. Have those conversations with those maybe awkward conversations with your outside counsel about what things cost and who's working on your work and how it's getting done and where those dollars are going. And then, as Wes spoke to, recognizing sunk costs and moving on when those costs are in fact sunk. So I think that's it. That's all I have.
Okay. Well, again, Wes and Rob, thank you so very much. And we will hopefully be able to make this available as a recorded webinar shortly. We want to thank you again for attending and have a good afternoon.
Be well, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate everybody attending, staying till the end.
Take care.